So my generation, baby boomers, part of our retirement is being funded by the enormous amount of mortgage debt that younger people have to take on to buy our homes. And it's completely unfair. It's immoral, in my opinion. And policymakers are in denial.
All right. Hey, weirdo. Welcome back. Today, I have a special guest. And it's one that I didn't expect to get through my regular means, but I'm happy to get it. I actually get to talk about the economic system in Canada for once. And instead of me just babbling about it, we actually have an expert on board. Our guest today has spent 30 years on the inside of the financial machine, managing over 10 billion assets in one of Canada's most prestigious investment firms. He's not a conspiracy theorist from the fringes. He's a Bay Street veteran, a former Morningstar Manager of the Year, and now he's stepped out to sound the alarm. Paul Musson is the author of a provocative book, Capital Offenses: Why Some Benefit Your Expense, and the voice behind the popular blog, Political Economy. He's here today to explain the crucial difference between money and real capital, and to argue that we are benefiting at the direct expense of our children. But this isn't a message of despair. Paul believes that with a clear understanding of the forces at play, we can demand change and steer our economy towards a more prosperous and equitable future. So if you have ever felt like system is rigged and you're working harder but falling farther behind, then this is the conversation you can't afford to miss. Paul, welcome to the show, and thank you very much for coming on.
Well, Cody, thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
So I do want to get a little bit into your background. You had a brilliant career in finances for over 30 years. Why did you step away from it to write this book?
Yeah, so I was very fortunate for my career. I had so much fun in my career. There were so many amazing aspects of it. Great company, great team, great clients. We could talk about any part of that if you're interested. But why I decided to write this book, I find that things work out best when they happen organically. And so what I mean by that is, and I talk to young people about this as well when they're starting out in their careers, don't look at a dollar number and say, okay, which careers make the most money? Okay, which one of those do I prefer? I'll go, no, find out what it is you like to do, because you're going to be doing it a long time. If you like what you do, you tend to do a better job. Sometimes you can't find what you like to do, so do any job, and you might find you actually like these jobs that you didn't think you would like. So my blog, which is Political Economy, my first name, I didn't really intend for it to be a blog. I take notes when I'm reading financial press, but I find if you take notes, you remember things a lot better and it sinks in. Do I really understand what this is all about? And then I figured, I might as well just send this to my wife and my three daughters. Their three daughters are in their late 20s. So they would know what the hell's going on. And they started forwarding it to their friends. And then people started emailing me, oh, I get this. You don't know me. Can you put me on your list? Just start to grow. Just trying to help people understand what's going on. And now we have our own website for it and everything. And then with the book, it was similar in that I was fairly naive about what was going on in the monetary system, how things worked. It wasn't until about the mid 2000s, just before the great financial crisis and this ridiculous housing bubble that was being encouraged, reckless housing speculation encouraged by policymakers in America and then Canada and then Spain and the UK and so on, Australia, because they thought it was good for the economy. It's not, and we can go into specifics as to why that is. And then I was even more angry at the central bankers' response to the great financial crisis. And so ever since then, I've just been learning economic history, economic philosophy, the different schools of economic thought, to understand how an economy really works. And then over the years, I was explaining this to my clients. And I use analogies to help my clients understand how things work. So, I first started out, I tried to impress people with how smart I was, and maybe they'll give me their money. So no, and then It was just the wrong way to do things. Again, not an organic way of doing it. So I want to help them with their business, help them understand, empower them with knowledge so they can help their clients. And then people say, Paul, you should write a book about this stuff because nobody talks about it quite like you do.
Mhm.
And I thought, oh, maybe, who knows. And then I thought, yeah, I think I will. And so in 2019, I started writing the book. And I'm 64 now. So I left Mackenzie almost 3 years ago. So I guess I was 61. And, it was getting hard to finish the book because I could really only write on vacations. You need
Mm.
large blocks of time. I mean, it's tough enough reading a book, never mind writing one, right?
Yes.
So
And back then there was no AI or LLMs to help you out either.
no, no, exactly. And yeah, and so I think, the team was ready to take over. Um, Communication and education. I still loved investing. I still do. But this to me just seemed more important.
Mhm.
And yeah, and so I left Mackenzie almost 3 years ago and got my free blog. It goes out weekly. And now I'm, just trying to get the word out there about my book. And yeah, so that's how it sort of happened. Again, I didn't plan on it. It
It
just
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 naturally happened.
here I am.
It, I do find it interesting that a lot of people who have gained success aren't the ones that are the smartest in the room most times. It's the guys who just ask the most questions. Um,
Yep.
people just want to learn. You get a lot further when you just ask, "Hey, is this something I can do?" Even if it's dumb, at least you'll know an answer and you can move forward with it. Um,
Exactly.
I want to get into a little bit of, you talked about central bankers. Um, I want to get into how they don't seem to understand the economy. Um, can we elaborate on that? Like,
Yeah.
you were working in financial systems. How come it seemed as if you didn't understand everything?
Yeah. So before I answer that, I'll just go back to what you just said about asking simple questions. I have a quote in my book from oh God, well, can't even remember his name now. The martial arts guy. Anyways, he said that uh, a wise man can learn more from a foolish question than a fool can from a wise answer. And so, yeah, so I sort of prided myself on asking the stupid question, open ended, stupid questions, because you can learn a lot. Um, Now, central bankers, um, yeah, I don't know how much they understand how an economy works. I mean, listen, they're very smart people
Mhm.
and they understand a lot of economics, but a lot of it is sort of Keynesian, mainstream type economics that is put forth to justify government spending, that is put forth to justify debt fueled consumption. And this comes at great harm to the productive capacity of the economy. Now, they're not bad people. It's not they're good people. They actually believe that I think they believe that their actions would be good for the greater good or for society at large. They convince themselves that driving asset prices higher, like houses and stock markets, stocks, would be good for the economy. It's not. And eventually the benefits of all that would trickle down to everybody else. Well, they didn't, and they won't. And theory alone could tell you that. And, it's not really I mean, I don't know why I think I do. I don't know for sure, but I put it down to short-termism, to arrogance, to wanting to try and control the system. So if you decide that you don't want to spend your money, they will print money and create inflation. We can talk about how your capital is taken from you when they do that to try and force you to spend your money. If you think that a house is overpriced and you don't want to spend it, they will try and force you to buy that house and give you no option. If you don't want to lend money to a company and because you think you deserve to get 8% return on that investment, they'll take interest rates down to zero and force you up the risk curve and force you to lend that, not force you, but to lend that money at a lower interest rate. And so they, the trouble starts because they think they know better than market forces. They think they know better than millions of people who have skin in the game, your own hard-earned capital with which you are making investment or spending decisions. And if you don't want to consume your capital and instead you want to save it and invest it, central banks have no business trying to convince you to do otherwise. But that is exactly what they do. Convince themselves that consumption is the fount of all economic prosperity. And it's not. You cannot consume your way to riches. I guess the main reason they think that consumption is key to economic growth is because of the measuring stick that they use to determine whether or not an economy is in good shape. That measuring stick is GDP, or gross domestic product. Now, all GDP is a measure of all final spending in the economy. So, and 2/3 of final spending in the economy is done by consumers. And so they think, well, we got to get consumers to spend because that's good for the economy. But it's only good for the economy if consumers are producing things that then gives them the wherewithal to go and spend. So if consumers are spending because they are saving or they're working hard and they're producing more capital, this extra capital gives them the wherewithal to spend. That's really good. That means that GDP growth is, that final spending is probably sustainable. But if they're doing it by taking on more and more debt, then it's not sustainable because you can only service so much debt. And so this is what policymakers have encouraged for decades. We are now in a situation where debt is everywhere, record amounts of household debt in Canada.
Yeah.
Government debt, total government debt is over 100% of GDP in Canada. US is well over 100%. Japan's 230%. It's not sustainable and it will end. And so the reason I wrote my book is really to try and educate people, to empower them. Like I used to empower my clients with truth and knowledge. I'm trying to help people understand what's going on, because with understanding, we, the people, can demand better actions from our leaders, from our policymakers. Because up until now, we demand, no, we want all the free stuff.
Yep.
Spend this on us, give us that. Governments don't produce any capital. Any money that they spend, they first obtain from the private sector in one of three ways. Taxation, of course, they borrow it, or they print money. And I can explain exactly how they get your capital from you when they print money.
Yeah, I want to go into that. I just want to make a statement for the audience here. I believe I came across a number. I don't know how credible it is, but I believe it's like 40% of Canadians are employed in some way, shape, or form by the government right now. That with a country that doesn't produce anything, because half of our economy is the government, it's kind of hard for everything else to build up around it. We have too many people in the system collecting what I'm calling luxury welfare, because that's essentially what it is. You go into an office to sit there for 8 hours a day, and it doesn't matter if you actually do the work. But I really want to break down.
Yeah, can I just make a comment on that, Cody? I mean, this is really worrisome. But a couple of things, and I write about this specifically in my book, that government, while important, I'm not anti-government. I'm sure you're not either.
No.
And a lot of, good, hardworking people in government. Now, I've heard the horror stories of not hardworking people in government. I'm sure we've all heard those stories. But it's the incentives, right? There's no profit that government has to generate, and they don't have to compete for the customer. It's a monopoly.
Yeah.
And so while government is very necessary, government does not produce capital. Government are facilitators of the production of capital by the private sector. Same thing with the industry I was in. I was in the finance industry. The finance industry is very important, but finance industry, for the most part, doesn't create any capital. We just help others we facilitate the creation of capital.
It's
By,
funny. It's funny you mentioned that because I just had an argument with somebody over because our stock exchange is the highest in the world right now or something like that. It's like the highest all-time high in the world right now. And it's all bank stocks. And I was trying to explain to somebody how that's not good because banks don't add value to our economy. But it's like it's lost on people that they don't understand what money is and what capital is, I think. And I think this is a good segue into going into that.
okay, okay, perfect. So, yeah, so one of the issues is not differentiating between money and capital. So, money's very important, but what makes the world go round is the production of capital. So, capital, you produce capital, could be a good or a service. And so you make a bike and I make a suit. So we both just created capital and then we decide to exchange it with each other. Now I've got your bike, you've got my suit. And very importantly, none of this came at anybody else's expense. There was no bike in the economy. There was no suit. You created a bike. I created a suit. We exchanged it. And society's that much better off. One bike, one suit. Nobody's worse off.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when we exchange it with each other, that's called direct exchange or barter. But you can't have a large economy with barter. It just doesn't work. Like how many kitchen chairs does it cost to Florida cost or something. So we use a medium of exchange called money. So it's indirect exchange. So in order to get my suit, you don't directly exchange your bike with me for my suit. You first sell your bike for $1,000, let's say. It's a nice bike. Then you use your $1,000 to buy my suit. Now, let's say you make 10 bikes, sell them for $1,000 each. You got $10,000. Stick that in your bank account. Now, what that $10,000 effectively represents is the 10 bikes of capital that you created. That $10,000 is temporarily storing that 10 bikes of capital that you produced.
Mhm.
So what's giving you the wherewithal? So let's say you're going to use that money to go on a nice vacation. What's giving you the wherewithal to pay for that vacation was the fact that you created 10 bikes. That was your means of payment, right? Now, let's say you decide, okay, I'm not going to go on a vacation till the end of the year. So you got the $10,000, which stores 10 bikes in your bank account. Now, before you get to go on a vacation, the central bank doubles the money supply. Now, when they double the money supply, when they create money out of thin air, they don't first create any capital to obtain that money like you did. No, they just punch a few digits or keystrokes and create the money out of thin air. So that money has no capital stored up in it, but it obtains capital as soon as it comes into the economy by extracting capital from the rest of the money already in existence. So as soon as it comes into the economy, it takes 5 of the bikes that's in your $10,000 and puts it into the newly printed money. That's what gives it value. So now your bank statement says that you still have $10,000 in the bank, so you're still feeling pretty good, but it only stores 5 bikes instead of 10. And so your $10,000 will only buy half as much as it would have done before the central bank doubled the money supply. And by the way, that's why my book is called Capital Offense, because they take your capital without your permission.
Why do we have a system that degrades our value?
Well, so what we have is a fiat currency system. So, which means you just create money out of thin air. I mean, we used to have a gold standard where money
Yeah.
was based on the amount of gold in the system, and that was a really good system. The old classical gold standard, anyways, before the First World War. But with a fiat currency system, you can just create money, push a few buttons. Now, there's nothing wrong per se, in theory, anyways, with a fiat currency system, as long as you control how much money was being produced. Now, they do control it, but they produce way too much, right? So the
Okay.
issue with a fiat currency system is how easily it is abused. And a gold standard could not be easily abused. So the monetary system is about the issues are those who are in charge of it. And now they've all convinced themselves that an economy needs a growing money supply in order to grow. It doesn't. Milton Friedman, he was a famous economist, a monetarist. There are different schools of economic thought, but he was a monetarist. And he believed that there should be a steady increase in money supply of 3 to 5% or something like that. I think that's too high, but that would be much better than what we've experienced over the last number of decades.
Yeah.
And so it's just those in charge. Now, when you increase the money supply, when governments continuously increase the money supply, they're able to extract capital from the private sector and then spend it back into the private sector. And, you become very popular with whoever it is receiving that money, either corporations through subsidies or individuals. You get them dependent on the state. You continuously vote them back into power because you want more money. And so, yeah, I think that's really it. Again, it's not like we were saying earlier, I think before we started, not bad people.
Yeah.
But just bad systems that bring out the worst in good people. And we all have it in us. We all have our not final moments, right? We all have it in us to not be our best at times, depending on what the corporate culture is, what the environment is, and vice versa, of course. And so that's why, I've written a book to help people understand how the system works and let's change it.
It even echoes my sentiment of when I was working in the government. There's no incentive on the inside as well as the outside to do anything, to go any higher. I was capped in my salary. I couldn't grow. If I was to grow, I was going in positions where I had no knowledge of that position or how to do that position, out of my technical expertise, that type of thing. And it's like, there's no incentive for anybody to change the system. There's no incentive for anybody to use the system. It just seems like the government is, it just seems like it's feeding itself at this point. And yeah, like good intentions. There's so many people who are just trying to make things better. But I think it's a lack of understanding what's actually in place. The systems are all patchwork. They're all put together with band-aids and glue. I give props to all of the developers in there hooking everything together in ways that I can remember. But yeah, we've gone down this well-intentioned path of rule of law, and now it's become so restrictive you can't do anything. And I think it's not just, is it politics that is causing our monetary system that's really the problem?
I know politics are a problem because politicians allow themselves to be convinced of these sort of fairy tale economic myths, because they'd rather be told that, yes, government spending is good for the economy. That
the GST rebate is well what you need, and nothing can be done aside from that.
Oh, no, exactly. And, government deficit spending is good for the economy. And without government deficits, then there's this one, I talk about it in my book as well. And by the way, my, cutting corners here, but my book, I go very, step by step, slowly, easy to understand language, analogies, so people will understand.
And I'll make sure it's in the description down below for anybody who wants.
Thank you. Yeah. But, there's this one economic school where they talk about the fact that if governments did not run deficits, if they did not spend more than they took in taxes, then there could be no net financial investment in the private sector. So you should be happy that there's government deficit spending. No, the best net financial investment number in the private sector would be zero, not positive. So I'll just briefly explain how this works. So if let's say you lend $10,000 to Apple. So they're going to take that $10,000 and they're going to put it to productive use. They're going to invest it in R&D or whatever. And they have to produce capital in order to pay you back your $10,000 plus interest. And then they're going to want some profit left over after that as well, right? So everybody wins. Like I said earlier, bike in a suit, now that all this more capital didn't come at anyone's expense. So the net financial investment in the private sector in that situation is zero, because you've got an asset of $10,000 that you lent to Apple. They've got a $10,000 liability that they owe to you. So your positive asset and their negative liability, they offset each other. It's zero. So you can have trillions of dollars of investment in the financial private sector, and it all amounts to zero unless you're lending to the government. So if you lend $10,000 to the government instead of to Apple, you have a $10,000 asset, but there's no offsetting negative $10,000 liability in the private sector. Instead, it's in the government sector, comes up as a deficit. So now you have net private investment of $10,000 in the private sector. So people think, oh, that must be good. No, it's not, because you have an asset, but it's not an investment. Because when you lend to the government, the vast majority of government spending is consumption, not investment. And so when they get your $10,000, it's gone. The only way they can pay you back is by taxing somebody else in the future or borrowing even more money from somebody else in the future. So it's like a future liability that society has, and that's what offsets your $10,000 asset. So is it not all government spending is bad, but government should not be spending more than they take in taxation.
Well, I also want to remind our audience that government's main purpose was to build roads, infrastructure, and defense of our country. That's literally all they were supposed to be. And we've built them up into this all-saving entity that manages our entire lives, right?
And they don't want to give it up. That's the problem. Right?
I bring this up. We break 3 laws every day, and we don't even know it. That's what our laws are. I've gotten to that you could break 3 laws a day and not even know it. Yeah,
I've heard that before too. Yeah.
It's just because we can't repeal. We won't repeal.
No, and I've got 2 chapters in my book on government to help explain the role that they should play and the very important roles that they do play, and the roles that they shouldn't. But it's now becomes this like monster in and of itself, and just sucking more out of the private sector. And same thing with the financial sector as well. Finance growing as a percentage of the economy. So you have these 2 entities, government and finance, that are facilitators of economic growth, but they don't produce the economic growth, right? So the private sector, or the actual producers of capital, they have more and more facilitators on their back trying to drag them along with them, and the whole economy is slowing down as a result. And you have productivity growth that's been grinding lower for decades. And it's not a sustainable path, and it will end really badly unless
we don't make it.
If we don't.
So I do want to get into your controlled implosion theory. If you could elaborate on that, like how would that affect our economy? How would that affect the individuals?
Yeah, badly. It will be a lot worse if we don't do that. So it's a controlled implosion, which is not a lot of fun and harmful for some people, or an out of control explosion, which is bad for everybody, way worse. Now, one of the issues is this belief that driving asset prices higher is good for the economy. If stock markets are going higher because companies are producing more and more capital, they're becoming more and more profitable, they hire more people, they pay them more, get more benefits. This is all really good stuff. And that growing capital and growing profitability pushes up the share price. And so if all the companies in the stock market are doing that, stock markets are going higher, but that's a symptom of what's going on in the economy. greater wealth being produced. But if stock markets are growing higher because central banks are taking interest rates down to zero or printing trillions of dollars to buy assets to drive stock markets higher, then there's no more wealth being created in the economy. So they're driving stock markets higher to try and pull the economy up with it. It doesn't work. Same thing with house prices. House prices have no business going up in value because a house is not a productive asset. So our house in Mississauga we bought it in 2001. It's worth 4 times what we paid for it.
Yeah.
Now our house is not producing 4 times as much stuff as it was 25 years ago. It hasn't quadrupled in size. The only reason, now remember earlier I said you make a bike, I make a suit, we fairly exchange it with each other. It was at nobody's expense. And in a free market capitalist system, whatever wealth you have is supposed to be a reflection of the wealth that you created and fairly exchanged with someone else out there. So your wealth is a reflection of wealth out there that others have that you created. So if our house goes up 4 times in value, who else out there is also 4 times better off? Nobody. But it's even worse than that. Not only is there not anybody who's 4 times better off, there's somebody who's 4 times worse off because they got to pay 4 times what we paid for the same economic good. So it's a redistribution of wealth from the next generation or newcomer to our country from their bank account into our bank account. We're benefiting at somebody else's expense. So my generation, baby boomers, part of our retirement is being funded by the enormous amount of mortgage debt that younger people have to take on to buy our homes. And it's completely unfair. It's immoral, in my opinion. And policymakers are in denial if they think that house prices don't need to come down in order to solve this problem.
Well, and it's exacerbated in two ways too, because we have the inflation of our monetary value. So you're paying extra for the price of the house. But on top of that, we have such restrictive building laws that there's no more supply to bring down demand for the costs of those homes either.
No, exactly. And I mean, there are a number of players, right? So certain municipalities jacked up the development fees and taxes, immigration, if it's too high and higher than the housing stock can respond to, and and when you drive housing prices higher, your property taxes go up. So you got to pay more to the municipal government because the price of your house. How come it costs more to run the government just because my house went up in price?
Yeah.
So the issue is to fix this, and where the pain comes is that, I've got my 10 steps at the end of the book. You need to stop increasing the money supply at such a rapid pace. They need to stop distorting interest rates to levels that are much lower than market forces would determine on their own. This much lower unnatural rate results in misallocation of capital, so that the economy is not nearly as productive as it should be. And then Wall Street needs to know that the Fed or the central banks will no longer come to their rescue if they make bad investment decisions. But they know that right now, they know that they will. And so it encourages all this ridiculous levels of leveraged, speculative, because it's first sign of trouble, i.e. first sign of falling asset prices, the Fed's going to come storming in, print trillions of dollars, which is really harmful to the mainstream economy. So the pain, and when I talk about this with people my age, like most people just never thought about it. They never thought, I'm making money in my home, good for me. They never thought about, well, who's paying for that? Or, we all want to believe that you can get something for nothing. You can't. If you're taking out more than you're putting in, it's coming at someone else's expense. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You just can't see who it is. Right? So, but when I explain it to people my age, fairly quickly, they understand. Now, they don't like it. They don't like me telling them that, they didn't really earn, all this money on their home, but they understand. And most would be fine. I was going to say happy. They probably would be happy, but they'd be fine, okay, with the price of their home going down to a fair level, to
Mhm.
a fair home price to income level that, existed back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Because then that would mean that the next generation has a fair chance of affording the same sort of lifestyle that we have enjoyed, despite the fact that a lot of them are generally probably better educated than we were,
Yeah.
willing to work just as hard, but can't afford nearly the same sort of lifestyle that we had. And this is a joke.
Even even going through the system, like it was um even at the end of the system. So I got just on the cusp of where people couldn't afford anything. I got lucky and invested early. But felt like a sack of bricks on my back every day because
Mhm.
I was just struggling to keep everything afloat.
Yeah.
Um, and even that alone, if you cannot have a house, it it hurts just to own it because you're putting money into it. You don't know what's going to happen. Half the time you're paying more for your mortgage than you are for food or heat or anything else you need.
Yeah.
Um, it I really felt I got screwed out of it, and that's why when I sold my house, my mother said to me, she's like, you could see the weight lift off your shoulders,
Sure. I'm sure.
um,
And
because it's
I,
just stressful.
and I know people like you, like your age, who like in, where we live, who are going through that, and it's a burden, and it shouldn't be that way. Now, when we bought our house in 2001, it's still a big investment, and you're
Yeah.
still taking on a mortgage and you're paying, but it was manageable,
Mhm.
right? That's the point. And then, policymakers to say, well, we're reducing interest rates or to get mortgage rates down to make housing more affordable. No, it makes housing more expensive. In the short term, it makes mortgage payments more affordable at the expense of higher mortgage rates and much greater interest expense over the life of the mortgage because the home prices went through the roof. And so I do believe it was good intentions, but just not well thought out. And that's what's really annoying is that when it's staring them right in the face now, what has happened? Because they're not stupid people either,
Yeah.
but they don't want to admit it. They don't want to admit what needs to happen because it's very painful. Like they don't want to lose the vote of my generation, right? So my generation is going to vote for whatever party is going to do their darndest to keep housing prices high.
Yep.
And so it'll be painful for my generation if our home prices go down, but that's what needs to happen, unfortunately. It's even more painful for younger people who recently bought a new home in an overpriced market. Due to no fault of their own, they could be in a negative equity position. The mortgage could be worth more than the house. And in those situations, I do think that there should be some sort of taxpayer relief for if somebody takes a huge loss, only for first-time home buyers,
Yeah.
right? And because if my home price goes down, well, so what? You know what I mean? Like I'll probably still be well, I'll be in a positive equity
Yeah.
position, but I'm just losing the money I didn't deserve to have in the first place. So and again, the book is not a book about retribution. There are times I think I sound kind of angry in the book. You should have read it when I first wrote it.
Oh,
I go back. Okay, let's tone it down a little. Um, it's a book of education, understanding, and with all that, I do believe comes greater empathy for what your neighbors are going through, why policymakers did certain things, and okay, look, we're in a really bad spot here. I think I know how we got here. Um, Here are the ways that I suggest that we can get out of it,
mhm.
but not without pain. And if policymakers are trying to get out of it without pain, and it will not work. It's just going to make things that much worse.
I have a saying that I say a lot. Like I don't care who does it. I don't care like who's to blame. I just want to fix the problem.
Yeah.
And I don't care. Like, you could drop yourself on your sword. I will be happy that you did if you fix the problem and not just keep exacerbating it.
Yeah. No, exactly.
And I have a feeling that a tiny feeling that that's what the CPC is going to do. They get into power, they're going to fall on that sword,
Mhm.
um, which will probably end up back in our situation again in 20, 40 years. But at least something will be have done of it. And I'm hoping that. What are your thoughts on building a new monetary system?
Uh, well, it depends what it is. Um, as I said earlier, there's nothing wrong per se with the fiat currency system other than, how easily it's abused. Now, it probably would be the best system if you were able to somehow put in strict rules that could not easily be changed. So in the
Yeah.
US, it would require an act of Congress or something. But, if asset prices started to tumble, that's exactly what they do. Oh, we're going to change the rules. It's an emergency. And, but if you can get government to both sides would have to agree, of course, to agree that this can no longer go on and that, the only emergency that would allow for the central banks revving up the printing presses again would be something like a war. Traditionally, that's when the central banks kicked into action. And the reason they do that, the reason they print the money is because people will not voluntarily lend enough money to the government to continue the war. So the government takes your capital from you without your permission by printing money. And you could argue it's for our own good, right?
I also remember during Civil War in the US, they stole or they took all of the US's silver from all of the people that they could find. Like, it's about protecting the nation. It's not about your assets at
Yeah.
that point. Yeah.
No, exactly. And so, if you could put that, into law,
Mhm.
then the fiat system, would be a good system. Um, Barring that, you could say, well, let's go back to like a classical gold standard. There's a good book called Better Money, Gold, Fiat, or Bitcoin
Yeah.
by Lawrence White. Um, and he talks in depth about the gold standard and what it might look like. And so that would be a good system because it's not a completely inelastic money supply. So what that means, if it's inelastic, it means that no matter what's going on, the money supply will not increase. It will stay the same. It won't respond to higher demand.
Mhm.
It is somewhat elastic in that if there's greater demand for gold, then it makes previously inefficient gold mines now profitable because the price of gold just went up and stuff like that. So more gold would come into the system. I'm not an expert on this stuff, but but even there, if we went to a gold standard, you know, unless you had strict rules, if we got into trouble, again, the US would just change the rules.
Yeah.
Just like Nixon changed the rules back in 1971 when he took the US off of the gold standard because too much gold was leaving the country because the US was increasing the money supply way more than the gold reserves were increasing, right? And
Yeah.
people were getting nervous. So there are, it's not the, people, oh, well, we've got to go to Bitcoin. We're going to, it's not the systems that are the issue. It's those who are controlling.
Mm. The
And
levers of power.
yeah, because they think they're doing what's right. And, and, and they believe that because economics is not a hard science. It's not a natural science like physics or chemistry. It's a social science, like sociology, psychology, whatever. It's based on human actions. So there are a number of different schools of thought out there that put forth different theories with respect to how an economy works. Now, economic laws can be very inconvenient, not a lot of fun.
Mhm.
You can't get something for nothing. People don't like hearing that. So then they put forth theories to convince you that you can get something for nothing. So guess which theories politicians are going to gravitate towards? The ones that tell them to
Socialistic.
spend. Yes, no, exactly. And these things come at great cost to
Yes.
to people, to society. Yeah.
I just want to leave off on one point here. Can you give some young advice out there, like some advice for young people out there? What should we be doing help our situation right now?
Educating yourself with respect to how an economy works. Um, and I think we were talking, or maybe before we were recording, about how divided the world is becoming. And I think it's becoming divided because people don't really understand what's happening. They're
Mhm.
working hard. Life is still tough. It's not supposed to be this way. I played by all the rules. How come it's not working for me? And then you need someone to blame. And so in America, Democrats blame Republicans, Republicans blame Democrats, in Canada's liberals and conservatives blaming each other. And so all the society rallies around it, and then they don't even talk to each other anymore. They all watch different media,
Hmm.
and nothing is going to get solved with people just following two separate paths. The house divided cannot stand. And so, but with education and understanding, young people will understand why they're getting screwed and how they're getting screwed, how we got here. And then hopefully will then be less angry at those around them who they think are responsible for it. And then we can all work together to improve the system and move forward. And,
Mhm.
I mean, it saddens me what's happened in Canada,
Yeah.
and in other developed economies, of course. But Canada's an amazing country, it's a beautiful country, and people are amazing. But boy, unless we change things, we're just gonna go further and further apart. Productivity growth will grind lower and lower. Debt will go higher and higher. People will become angrier and angrier. So
It,
education.
it's funny. The more I learn, the less I'm angry at
Yeah,
everything.
yeah, no, it's
It's
not.
really simple. Just understanding how the system works really helps to flush out the anger. And then when you have these conversations, you're just laughing or having fun or giving information, and you're not taking it personally. And I think, yeah, people need to understand it's not personal. It's just how it is.
Yes, exactly. That's what it is. So, anyways, that's the
So
goal of the book and my blog, and with people like yourself out there doing this, and hopefully together we can all make a difference.
very, very. Where can people find you? Make sure everything's in the description below, but I want to
Yeah,
make sure that tell
yeah,
everybody where you can find you.
yeah. Thanks, Cody. So I have a website, Paddington Capital MGMT.com. You can also get there just by Political Economy. So PAUL, my first name, itical.economy.com. And so on there, I got my free blog. Just put your email in, you'll get a weekly post. And my book is called Capital Offense: Why Some Benefit at Your Expense. You can get that on Amazon or Indigo online. And there's also an Audible version of the book as well. So for those who prefer to listen, you can get that too.
Perfect. And I'll make sure everything's down below. And to anybody out there who enjoyed this, please like, comment, subscribe. It helps just spread the message. And if you need any help, please reach out. I'm always open for DMs or calls or anything. If you want any more information, please reach out. To everybody out there, stay weird. Perfect. Um, thank you very much for coming on. From here, what happens is I'll take this away. It'll be a couple weeks before I have this edited out. But once I'm done, I'll reach back out and I'll give you all of the assets that I have, everything on my screen, the video, everything.
Great.
Um, is your channel also a YouTube channel?
So we're just starting to build that out now.
Okay.
So,
I can send you the collaborator link as well when it's
oh,
posted so that it
okay,
shares
great.
on your feed.
Oh, fantastic.
Perfect.
My daughter, she's helping me with all this stuff. And now we just hired someone else as well. So we're slowly,
Start
I tried to do a lot of it myself, but well, you know what it's like when you work on this stuff, you're not doing any
any
creativity,
actual,
any
yeah.
content, you know? And so, yeah, it's a lot of learning, that's for sure.
I spent a good 3 months just trying to figure out what I'm doing. It was interesting. I still have no clue what I'm doing, but I'm getting somewhere, so I'm happy about it.
Yeah, good
Anyways,
for you. Good for you.
yeah,
Yeah, and listen, if you ever want to revisit any of this stuff, there's lots we didn't get to. If you ever want to do another call, just let me know.
perfect. Sounds good. Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Take
Take
care.
care. Bye bye.